Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Let's Talk. I am Dr. Anita Raja, and like every week, this week also, we have come up with some very interesting topics. Now, when we are shoved into the world of parenthood, sometimes we find ourselves quite lonely, quite isolated, because we may not get the help that we require. And sometimes you may feel that socially your friends have left you because they can't really support you, especially if the support is a specialist support that you need. Now, there's so many parents who have kids preterm, but they don't know where to take their young babies. On the other hand, we've got parents who don't know if there are any clubs where they can take their babies, if there are any products that they could buy, use, because they're worried about the reviews around those products. And sometimes in this loneliness, it is different agencies, different people, and different companies that actually become quite useful. My Bump to Baby is one such company, such website, which actually meets the needs of parents. It is a parenting directory, which starts from pregnancy up until preschool children. If there's any questions that parents have got, they can turn towards it. So I thought in today's show, it might be an excellent idea to actually invite the CEO of My Bump to Baby and ask her a couple of vital questions around what she actually does to help new parents. So on my show today, I have invited Carla. Welcome to our show, Carla.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.
Carla, first of all, I'd like you to tell our viewers what My Bump to Baby actually does.
Do you know, it's a very good question. One we get a lot because we cover so much. So basically, we are a pregnancy to preschool platform, and we cover the whole of the UK. So what we do is we support small businesses throughout the UK so they can add listings on our directory. And then what we do is we promote that to growing families as well. So growing families can come on and find local pregnancy to preschool groups, classes and lessons. And also we ask that the businesses get real life reviews from parents as well, so that you know that you're taking your child to the best place that you want them to go. And also, as well as that, we also connect growing families with family law solicitors, financial advisors, and now estate agencies as well, just so that they know they're working with trusted people in the local area.
Well, that's excellent. But, you know, the big question is, Carla, I mean, there's so many people out there, new parents who probably feel a bit lost in this world. When the baby comes in, they've got lots of questions and they don't really know where to turn. But you came up with this unique idea of actually setting up a website that could help them. How did you end up setting up My Bump to Baby?
Do you know, it was actually it's funny because a lot of the businesses I speak to, a lot of businesses are set up because they've gone through hard times, and that is how My Bump to Baby came about. So my son, he was born 7 weeks early, and I had something called Placenta Previa. So that's like a low-lying placenta that didn't move, and I had a big bleed. And he was placed in the neonatal unit for around 3 weeks, but 3 weeks feels like 3 years when you've not seen your baby. And you know, when they're ill and stuff like that. So I suffered then with postnatal depression after that and PTSD. And I felt so lonely. See, I've got a lot of friends, but I kind of go into myself a little bit when I'm kind of feeling vulnerable. And so they'd say, oh, are you free today? And I'd be like, no, not interested, don't want to come out. And I literally felt like my whole body all the time was just shaking with fear all the time. And then when the health visitor would come round, she'd come to the door and I'd be like, hello, life as a mother is wonderful, and all that, you know, a load of rubbish really, because I wasn't enjoying it at all. I found it really, really difficult. I didn't feel like I was a very good mum, and I didn't give my son the best start to life. So I felt guilty for that. And then I started writing a bit of a blog really. about my honest story around parenting, which was probably hard for the grandparents to read, really, which I did feel guilty about. But then at the same time, my whole, you'll see from my Instagram earlier, my therapy is writing and sharing and oversharing and hopefully helping other people. And basically with that, I went to the doctors and I said, right, I can't carry on like this. What can I do? And he gave me antidepressants. And I started taking them, but they just didn't agree with me. I just felt very zombie-like. Like if my husband would come home with another woman, I'd have been like, do you want a cup of tea? Do you know, one of those. Like I was just not with it at all. And so what I found that, so I went to the doctors again and I was like, look, I need help. Again, and he said, well, get to a baby group or something, you know, like try and meet other new parents. So I thought that's a really good idea. So this one day, it sounds ridiculous, but I got up, I couldn't sleep the night before because I was thinking, how am I going to get a baby out of the house in the car, lunch packed and everything for a certain time anyway. You can imagine the anxiety running through your mind at that stage. Anyway, I got there and they were like, oh no, that class finished like 2 years ago. And I was like, oh, 2 years ago. And I just remember sitting in the car afterwards and just crying and just feeling so lonely. And I was so ready to try and just put myself on the right track. And then that class was out of date. And also, what I thought about all these amazing small businesses out there, mums that have started baby groups and pregnancy classes that aren't being found. And there was no place for parents to be able to find these classes. So what I decided to do is I decided that I wanted to launch a directory so that every parent can find local groups and classes, etc. And so I spoke to my partner and he was like, oh, we could just do it in the local area. And I was like, well, I'd really like the idea of doing this across the UK because there's a lot of mums out there, a lot of dads too, that need that extra support and just don't want to feel lonely. So that's how it all started. And I know I talk a lot, so I'm sorry.
No, that's beautiful. You've done a fantastic job because I think you've made it so much more easier for people. And during COVID times, Carla, tell us, what sort of support did you put out there for new mums, new parents who were shoved into the world, unprepared, had no clue what parenting entailed? Because I think when you look at Instagram and social media and all these celebrities who have these amazing bods and, you know, they're carrying their babies and make it look so easy. And then you compare your own misery of the sleepless nights with them. It makes it so much more difficult, doesn't it?
Oh, it really does. And all you have to do is go on social media to make yourself feel a bit rubbish, to be honest with you. So that was something that was really important to me with my Instagram, is to always be honest around motherhood. And I've actually gone on there so many times and just cried because I found it so hard. And some mums just take to motherhood so easy, whereas I found it quite difficult. And I wanted to share that for other mums that felt it was difficult as well. And I think during lockdown, what I decided to do is, as you can tell, I do like to talk a lot. So I decided to launch some podcasts on my Bump to Baby as well. One called 50 Shades of Motherhood that talks about taboo subjects that people don't feel really comfortable talking about, but want to listen to. So we talk about things like baby loss, domestic violence, all of these different stories around motherhood. And then we've got the expert podcast as well, where we invite experts, pregnancy to preschool experts from all over the UK on to talk about different subjects. Like, for instance, we had someone last week talking about cloth nappies, because a lot of people want to make the change, but they don't necessarily know what it entails. So we just want to provide people with the information that they've got to hand so they can make an informed decision on whether that kind of parenting is something that they want to do. We also talk about things like divorce and the process, and it's just basically a support area for parents, really. But also what we did is, with the pregnancy to preschool groups and classes, at first I was like, oh no, this is awful for them, it's going to be awful. But a lot of them turned it around and moved online. So we changed our directory a little bit to show if they were online, so parents could still access that support from the comfort of their own home. And a lot of them are still online now. So it's great, really, that parents can get support no matter what their situation is.
No, I really want to thank you for what you're doing, Carla. We've got a question from a sister who has sent us a question. She's written, both myself and my husband are watching your show. Firstly, we love the content and really appreciate the content you get out to us. But secondly, we're both amazed with what you've managed to achieve, Carla. We were just wondering, what's the proudest moment, biggest achievement since starting My Bump to Baby?
Oh wow, that is a question. I actually met Peter Jones. That was a big moment for me because I remember applying for this kind of award type thing, and it was a couple of years ago now. And Sage, I don't know if you've heard of the accounting firm Sage, but they were looking for the UK's most ambitious business, and we got down to the last few, and I actually got to meet Peter Jones and like ask him a load of questions, which, as you can imagine, the poor guy probably wished he'd never asked me because I wouldn't shut up then. I was like, Peter. Anyway, that was probably my proudest moment. But also, we get featured now in the media a lot for the podcasts and stuff like that. And the main thing for me is through everything that I've been through, and is hopefully the reason why I've been through so much is to help others, because I just want to be that voice and hopefully be able to support other people, really.
Yeah, because I guess when it comes to supporting parents out there, there is a lack of support out there, unfortunately. And I'll be honest, I'm a GP myself, and sometimes, I mean, you have to actually Google the help that is out there because you don't really know about it and it's not that readily available, like mummy baby classes, like, if you want to take your little newborn baby out for swimming, if you want to meet new mums, it just seems so difficult to actually find the right support out there. And I guess, starting this blog was such a good idea because you started it and you just, I'm sure that in the beginning it must have been all your raw thoughts put in together into writing, supporting these beautiful new mums out there who are probably struggling with their own mental health. I mean, Carla, as you know, I have struggled with my mental health as well initially when I had my first son, and I totally understand where you're coming from. And this is why this subject is so close to my heart. And this is why you're on our show today, because you're ever so lovely. And we're hoping that we can have a long discussion around your life and your journey as well. But that is going to be in the second half of our show. For now, viewers, if you want to be part of our show, it is extremely easy. You have our telephone number on your screens. You have our WhatsApp number as well. WhatsApp us, ask the question. It's time for a break. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Dr. Anita Raja. And before we went on to the break, we were talking to lovely Carla, who is the CEO of My Bump to Baby. If you want to be part of this show, it is very easy. You can call us. Our number is 01924231083. It's on your screens. And you can WhatsApp us a question, which we can make part of our live show. Our number is 07585835150. Carla, before we went on to the break, you were telling us about your proudest moment, which was quite interesting. I mean, I'm sure you had a lot of fun meeting Peter Jones. However, I was quite interested in asking you a couple of more questions around your project, My Bump to Baby. I mean, you mentioned that you also provide some financial advice or sort of connect families with financial advisors. So could you tell us that aspect of, your company?
Yeah, something, I've got a bit of a financial background, so something that is really, really important to me is I've seen the worst happen when people don't have life insurance or wills, etc. And unfortunately, sometimes at that point, it's too late for parents to get help. I also interview a lot of people on our podcast as well who unfortunately have sickness, long-term sickness, and they haven't had life insurance or taken life insurance. I'm aware that a lot of people were getting it online, and sometimes, unfortunately, that means you're not covered for what you think you're covered for. So you're like paying a set amount and you're not actually getting anywhere. So what we do is we work with one trusted financial advisor, one trusted family law solicitor, and now one trusted estate agent in each town throughout the UK. The idea behind that is so that parents can, they trust our brand, and we've spoken to these businesses and we know these businesses and we know who they are, and we're trusted. We believe that you will be looked after speaking to these local providers, really. So that's why we're passionate about that, because it's so important to look after yourself. And also from the family law side, you know, there's a lot of people at home, and you know, they might be finding they're suffering from domestic abuse, and they're unable to kind of know where to turn. We share a lot of articles and blogs on domestic abuse and you know, what to look out for, and we share a lot of real life stories as well, so to help other parents so they don't have to Google things necessarily, like, is this domestic abuse? Read other people's real life stories, and hopefully then, you know, within that blog you'll know exactly where you need to go and who you need to turn to.
No, definitely. And you must come across such interesting people with such interesting stories. Would you want to share a story with us? Any interesting interviews that you've taken recently?
Yes. So recently we were in the Huffington Post, actually. I spoke to a lovely lady who actually suffered from COVID during pregnancy. Now, this was before the vaccine had actually been rolled out to pregnant people. At first, initially, they weren't sure, so they weren't sharing it. They were saying, you know, hang fire. And unfortunately, she got really sick, and she very nearly lost her life. Her heart stopped beating. Her child was actually taken out around, I think, 6 months, and she was put in an induced coma. She's doing well now. She is in a wheelchair. She did suffer from a stroke afterwards. But it was really important for me to share that story. I know at the moment, you know, with COVID, it is a very controversial subject that some people don't like to talk about, or some people have different views on. And my main thing is, I think you've just got to do what's right for you. But it was important for me to share this lady's story because she'd been through so much. And if it just helped one person make the right decision for them, then that's great. But it was just important for me to get that out there for her. And we got picked up by the media on that particular story. So that was good, because it covered that and just raised awareness around the signs of getting COVID during pregnancy, really.
And you were quite active when it came to being vaccinated in pregnancy, because I remember that you were interviewing people, professionals, and taking their view on it, because as you've mentioned yourself, I guess it's a subject that not many people want to talk about. And some people mistrust science and unfortunately don't have the faith in science that they should have. So do you want to share any sort of stories around that as well? Because you did quite a lot of work spreading awareness, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. For me personally, I decided to get the vaccine because I have terrible health anxiety, and I just felt it was best for me. And I think what you have to do is read up, you know, all your options and just see, you know, what is best for you. But unfortunately, I was in a group of ladies, and a few had actually got COVID, and unfortunately, a couple had passed away from it. And that was my decision made up. It was actually after speaking to the lady on the podcast that I decided to personally get the vaccine. But I think it's a case of kind of being open-minded and not judgmental. I think a lot of people can be quite judgmental on other people's opinions. And I just think, well, you know, you just have to let people do what they want to do and what they feel's best for them, really.
And Clara, for your blogs and, you know, your podcasts, where do you and how do you contact all these amazing women and share their amazing stories?
Well, on My Bump to Baby, we're really lucky because we've got a lovely community of women. So we get a lot of people that email us and they've got a story to share that they want to share, which is really good. I mean, the thing for us is it's making sure that these people are happy to kind of share the story. And there's so many amazing, brave, inspirational women out there that are happy to share the story, which is absolutely amazing, because it does take guts, doesn't it, to kind of stand there and tell people. I mean, these are some of the people's most vulnerable times in their life, and they're actually kind of coming on your podcast and sharing, that time just to help other people. And I find it so inspiring. But yeah, we put a lot of messages out there in our newsletter, across our socials, and we get a lot of emails, to be honest, of requests for covering different topics. But we also cover other topics as well, which are like, sex after children. Sorry, Dad, if you're watching, I've not done it. But, these kind of subjects that are a bit out there and a bit comical as well, really, because we're real mums at the end of the day. And I think sometimes, especially that's something I wanted to keep with My Bump to Baby is we're not just a business, we're mums and we're real, and I hate crafting. And, yesterday I baked some cookies and I put icing on before I put them in the oven. Apparently you're not supposed to do that, but it's just share, instead of pretending, let's just all stand there and actually be real with each other and say, I didn't enjoy motherhood today. Today it was rubbish, or I don't like my child today, and that's okay, because I think by actually being honest with each other and honest to yourselves, then you'll feel a lot better and a lot happier. And sometimes when you are on social media and you're scrolling all day, you can just feel awful by it. So I just wanted to kind of be that picture in the feed of that mum like crying, like, this is an awful day. My child has had Weetabix for dinner 3 days in a row and it's fine, at least he's fed, so it's just about raising that awareness, really.
No, it definitely is, Clara, and you're so right, because when we look at social media, it makes us look so bad, because it just seems that we perhaps are not efficient enough, because all these lovely bums out there seem to have the tidiest bump, and they look perfect, they're slim and smart after having the baby, they're feeding the baby, and yet they look like divas. I mean, it just really puts you under a lot of unwarranted stress and pressure. And in terms of mental health, you've mentioned that, you discuss all sorts of topics, and mental health, of course, is a topic that is very close to your heart as well, because you've suffered from mental health problems, postnatal depression after your son. So what sort of support do you provide to women out there?
So we talk about that a lot. That's one that comes on our podcast quite a lot. I've got a lot of blogs on that, and we do get a lot of real life stories from parents as well. So with the mental health side of things, I think it's just a case of sharing and oversharing from my part. That's all I want to do in that sense, because I think hopefully, if anyone is struggling and they read my post, or perhaps they're watching today and think, actually, I am struggling a bit. That's okay. I think the first step is actually admitting it to yourself, because I remember for ages, I didn't even know what postnatal depression was 5 years ago. And I just knew that every day was an awful day. Like literally I'd wake up and I'd think, oh, not again, not again. And it was just an awful day every day. And it's like almost like this grey cloud just follows you around. But I'm quite social, as you can probably tell, because I like to talk a lot. And I can easily put on a front with people. So, like with friends and stuff like that, I can easily pretend, everything's okay, and it's all fun and games and stuff, but I think actually sharing behind closed doors of what the real true feelings are behind is quite important, because I think a lot of people aren't okay every day, and of course everyone has bad days as well, so there's a mix of that. It's raising awareness around that, but it's also being aware with how we feel, and also what makes us feel better. Self-care, what do you enjoy doing? Do you enjoy having a nice bath, or and just trying to get more parents to kind of think of themselves as well, I suppose.
No, definitely. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you or wants to contact you, how can they do that?
You can email me. My email address is carla@mybumptobaby.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram under mybumptobaby, both with the number 2 on those.
Lovely. And you are prompt in your replies, I assume, because it does seem like you keep yourself quite busy.
Yeah, I think that's, so many people say to me, they say, oh, how have you done that business with like a 5-year-old? And I say to like a lot of mums, how have you stayed at home with children? Because I find that even harder. I
It is.
anyone.
No,
I admire
definitely.
anyone that can do that,
No,
like, so.
excellent. Yeah, no, but Carla, you are inspirational. I mean, there's absolutely no question about that. You've put yourself out there. You've come up with this amazing idea. Your baby, which is called My Bump to Baby, is actually it's just your prodigy child. I mean, such an amazing idea behind it to help people and women out there, parents out there who are struggling with their mental health. If somebody is struggling and facing domestic violence, which is something which is still very common, unfortunately, the way women are programmed is that they accept that there's a lot of acceptance, especially if you've got children and you try and make a relation work as long as you can, and you then assume that it might be normal. It's okay for you to take the abuse that you are facing, because that might be something that many women are facing but not talking about. But it's so important that we highlight these issues again and again and tell women out there that it is not normal, it is not okay. We've got the support on our screens if you need any form of support from us, British Muslim TV, especially for women who are struggling out there. It's time for a break, viewers, but you have to stay with us. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Dr. Anita Raja. And before we went on to the break, we were speaking to lovely Carla, who is the CEO of My Bump to Baby. Carla, as you know, this is a live show and we get lots of questions and calls as well, which we aim to make part of our show. While we were on the break, we got a question from a sister, and the question was, she's written that I love everything both of you are doing, but coming from someone who's been interested in starting my own podcast for a while, I was just wondering what prompted you to start a podcast and what it was like in the beginning stages.
That's a really good question. So I'd always wanted to start a podcast because I love to talk. And I think that's something, there's a few questions that, you want to ask yourself before you start a podcast. And we are actually putting together some training on this, on how to launch a podcast on a budget, actually. That's going to be coming out soon. But with the podcast, I think it's a case of kind of thinking of your idea, having a look at what other podcasts are out there and matching your podcast to your personality, because I love to talk and I love to overshare and I love to help other people. Mine worked well having a guest on each time and kind of particularly talking about a particular topic each time. So you might have a hobby or something that you're really passionate about, and that probably should be where your focus is, because I think it's very easy to lose interest in doing a podcast. Once the novelty wears off and you kind of are getting used to doing it all the time, if you're not that interested in it, you won't want to talk about it. So it's picking something that you're really interested in and trying to kind of work out how, different episodes that you can cover. If you can get to 12, then you're on to a winner, really. If you can pick 12 episodes off the top of your head that you could cover, I'd say it sounds like it would be the perfect podcast.
Lovely tip, Carla. Thank you so much for that. And Carla, we've talked about your prodigy child, My Bump to Baby. We've talked about this initiative that you took 5 years ago, but we haven't talked about you and your story. First of all, congratulations. We've got our fingers and toes crossed for your current pregnancy. You're 29 weeks pregnant, and you've taken the courage to come on our show and talk about your own journey as well, which is not a easy topic. Because I was reading your Instagram post from today, and it was quite interesting how you had put in all your raw thoughts, which you're very good at doing anyway, and you had explained why you would not really want to bump into someone that you know, because it is difficult for you to answer questions around your current pregnancy, because this is a high-risk pregnancy. We will come to this, but before we come to this, we're quite interested in your journey as a mother. You've had a couple of losses in between, and we'd be quite interested in knowing this.
Yeah, of course. And I'm more than happy to share this. I think a lot of people out there go through losses, and it can be such a lonely time. So I, going back to the beginning, I'll go into a bit of detail here. I hope my dad isn't watching, but I came off the pill just before I got married, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to get my body ready for a pregnancy, and that'd be that anyway. We were due to get married, and I fainted at my friend's house, and I was like, I don't understand. Anyway, my friend who has 3 children, she said the pull-out method works. Well, I should have counted her children that were under 3 at the time, because it didn't work, and I ended up pregnant at my wedding. So I was pregnant with my son, George, and I had a low-lying placenta with him, which I mentioned earlier. And I woke up, just to long and short of it is, I woke up in hospital because I had to keep going into hospital with these bleeds, in a pool of blood. And unfortunately, I had something called Placenta Previa, which is when the placenta doesn't actually move out the way of the cervix. And I had to have an emergency C-section then. And he got taken away. He came at 33 weeks. He got taken away straight away, placed on the neonatal ward. I was upstairs with the other ladies who had just had children. You could hear the children crying, and I was just sat there thinking, where's mine? Because all of a sudden you've got this bump, and then it's gone, and it's been taken away, and you've no idea where this baby is. And then I went down to the neonatal ward. I think it was the next day, but I don't know. I can't even work out days at this point. But I went to the neonatal ward, and there was a lovely neonatal nurse changing his nappy. And all of a sudden I got this whole thing like, he doesn't need me. Like, my body failed him, bringing him into the world, and he doesn't actually need me. And that was just a feeling that I had. So I think from the bonding from an early stage, it wasn't really there, because I just felt like I'd kind of, I can't explain it. I suppose I felt like I'd failed him, really. And I'd failed as a woman because I didn't carry him to term. And I'd never think that of anyone else, but that's in my mind what I was thinking. So anyway, that's when the postnatal depression started. And, it's just kind of like a bit of a downward spiral, really. But I was always open with my feelings, and I always kind of blogged about it, which massively helped, although they may have been difficult to read for some people close to me at the time. And then when George got to 3, he got his 33 childcare hours, didn't he? Well, I thought that was the perfect time to start trying for another baby. So we did, and within a couple of months, I was pregnant, and we were really excited. Went to an early scan, everything looked great, 1 baby in there. Went to the NHS scan, and there were 2 babies in there. I was like, oh, I didn't plan for this. The car's not big enough. How am I going to afford nursery fees? It's like all these things come into your head, and you just think, oh my goodness. And then once you've got the idea in your head, you think, right, okay, I'm looking forward to this, although it will be hard. And then we later found out that they were called Momo twins, which basically they were sharing the same placenta and in the same sac. So they were very high risk. And I kept having bleeds with them. And eventually at 16 weeks, I went for a routine scan, and I'd actually lost them both. And it was, basically scans now for me are terrifying, but I try and go to as many as I can. I'm like one of these people that I have to kind of try and beat things. So I wanted to beat this fear that I've got about scans, but it's just not happening at the moment. But anyway, with the twins, I was terrified of birth. I was terrified of giving birth vaginally. I don't know why. It's just a fear of mine that I've had for years. And they said, you have to give birth to the twins vaginally. I was like, oh my God. So we went into the hospital, and all the contractions started, and eventually we gave birth. I say we, me and my husband, gave birth to the twins there, and then we had a funeral type service for them. And to be honest, after that, I really wasn't right. When I think back, like, I really wasn't right in the mind. Like, it really traumatized me. I think it was the whole experience of being at the hospital, having the scan, them dying, confirming that, and then not going back in for quite a few days, and having to then give birth to them, because you're walking around shops and people are like, oh, when you're due, and you're just like, well, I just lied because I didn't want to make people feel bad, but I was like, oh, in so-and-so, whatever month. And And I think that time in between is the part that I found the most traumatizing, really, because you know, you're showering and you can see this bump, and you just, you know, you're getting on with your work day and you look down and it's still there. And I think that part was quite traumatizing for me personally. And then after that, I felt like I wanted to fill this void straight away, wanted to get pregnant straight away. And it didn't happen for a while. Then it did, and I had a miscarriage. Actually, it was one of my friends got me these lovely angel bracelets. And as I was opening the gift, because she didn't know I was newly pregnant, I felt blood pouring down my leg. And that was my miscarriage, the second one. And then a month after that, I had another earlier miscarriage on then. And then I didn't get pregnant for like 18 months. So then when you're not getting pregnant, you know, you get a bit obsessed. So I was getting obsessed, and it was like, you know, if we went to bed on an argument and we didn't end up doing it, I was like, that's it now for another month. And you can almost send yourself into a crazy world when you're not getting pregnant. So I feel like I've been through quite a few things, but in a way, hopefully, it's because that I can help other people, because fertility struggles is something I never realised how hard that is. I mean, I only went through 18 months of it. But when you are praying that you're pregnant and your boobs feel a bit sore or something, and you're thinking, oh, I might be, and you do that test and it's negative, and then you just cry and cry and cry, and then you think maybe it was too early, then you buy more tests, and you know, it's awful. And then when you're at an age where all your friends are thinking about extending the family even further, you feel like, well, it should have been me next. But you want to be happy for them, and you are happy for them, but you're also so jealous as well. And it's that kind of feeling of jealousy, really, that I hated about myself. And I didn't want anyone to tell me they were pregnant to my face, because I just felt like I'd cry and I wouldn't look happy enough for them. I wouldn't smile enough for them. It's an awful journey. And that's something I'm passionate about sharing as well, because just because I'm pregnant now, I don't want to forget about those people going through all of that, because it's awful.
Oh, Carla, you know, I could listen to you for hours on end. You know, the way you have narrated your story, I'm sure has touched the heart of so many people out there. We do have a question, but I think I'll ask you this question after the break, because I want you to give us a nice, comprehensive answer. Or I could give you the question, but I'll wait for the answer after the break, if that's okay with you.
Oh, yes.
It's from a brother who's messaged us, and the question is, I'm just sat watching your show with my other half. I'm blown away with what you've managed to achieve so far, Carla, especially considering your mental health struggles. You mentioned earlier that medication didn't really help. We've just been blessed with our first child as a couple of weeks ago. I'm currently going through a similar thing myself with my mental health. I was just wondering what you found to help best, as medication wasn't the answer for yourself. And I guess, Carla, when it comes to medicalizing issues, yes, we've got a term for how a woman can feel or a man can feel if they're struggling with their mental health, and it's called depression. But as you rightly said, I guess medication is not always the cure, the answer, the management of that issue. And I guess as clinicians, we try quite hard that our patients comply and take on the advice that we're giving them. But it's very important that we also understand the demands, the needs of our patient, because every patient is so different. For some patients, counseling will work. For other patients, medication will work. So it's very important to sort of be open to that idea. If you want to be part of our show, it's very easy. Our number is on your screens. We've got our WhatsApp number as well. It is time for a break. Welcome back to Let's Talk. Before we went on to the break, we had a question for Carla, and the question was around mental health. So the question is, if you are not able to take medications because they're not meant for you, how do you manage your mental health? Carla, tell us about how you did it.
Well, do you know, just to go back a little bit, after the twins, I felt like my body, because I also want to raise a bit around this kind of OCD and health anxiety that I developed afterwards, is I felt like I couldn't control my own body because my body had failed me so many times with these pregnancies. So what I started doing is getting really bad health anxiety to the point where if I had a headache, I thought it was a brain tumor, and I got a really obsessive personality, as well as the anxiety and obviously depression as well. And that was really, really hard. And then what I started to do is this is not like me actually at all, but I started to vigorously clean the house. And you wouldn't believe it if you know me, because that is totally out of character for me. But I just wanted to be busy in the mind all the time. And that's part of the reason probably my bump to baby has grown so much in such a short amount of time, really. But just to go back to what you asked, is it wasn't for me either, the medication. And, you know, amazing if it works for you, but I just really wanted to try and tackle this myself. So what I started doing is I started with a counsellor. I rang Mind. There's a charity called Mind that you can call, but at a time of despair there is a huge waiting list. So I was just like, this is awful, I can't carry on like this. And a few times, I mean, I wasn't suicidal, but I did think to myself, I cannot carry on like this. What am I going to do? And when I reached out to those charities, yes, we can get someone to you, but there is a 2-month waiting list, and I think 2 months is 2 months too long. So what I decided to do is I decided to go online and find a counsellor that did something called CBT, and I did that first of all. And we talked about the issues that I had and the reasons why. And she got me to stop Googling my symptoms, which was a huge benefit. Did the CBT work for me? A little, not fully. So I came away from my 10 sessions with her. I think they were around £25, so not overly expensive. I know it just, I mean, you can do them every couple of weeks. There's a lot of different programs out there that you can do. So I did that, and then I found this amazing guy called Carl Jackson, actually, and he did something called IEMT for me, and it's called Integral Eye Movement Therapy. And that is the one thing that I can put down to. I gave up coffee. That was a big thing because I was getting anxiety all the time. And in the end, I just thought, my friend said, try and give up coffee and see how that helped. That helped. But also in the meantime, I went to see him for 2 sessions. I didn't go to see him, sorry, we were in lockdown. I definitely didn't. I was on Zoom. And what we did is I had a lot of worries. I'm a very sensitive person, so like when I speak to people on my podcast, I come away like really, really upset a lot of the time. So what I found is I went through him, and he goes through your whole journey, and what you do is you think of all the things that are traumatizing you, and he does this kind of movement, and you follow his finger with your eyes back and forth and in certain patterns, and it's meant to heal any trauma. Now, for the first month, I'd say I felt a bit better, but then after that I felt so much better, you know. And I still have this health anxiety a little bit, I'm not going to lie, but I've got more of a rational mind, and there's certain things with the depression and things like that that just don't seem to come up for me anymore, really. The anxiety is still there a little bit, especially at the moment with where I am in my personal journey, but that has helped me most of all, really. And also, for anyone that's listening that might be struggling with fertility, he actually did a hypnotism session on me for fertility, and the second month I was pregnant. I don't know whether that is, whether it just happened like that, I don't know, but that is what happened anyway.
I mean, you may have relaxed, after that, and that may have helped, because I think when you're trying so hard, it really doesn't happen. But when you sort of stop trying, that's when you actually could fall pregnant. Now, Carla, your current journey is a very interesting one. You're 29 weeks pregnant with a high-risk pregnancy, and it was a very heartwarming, heart-touching Instagram post that you posted before you came onto our show tonight about your anxieties around this pregnancy. Do you want to tell our viewers about your current journey?
Yeah, sure. So I got pregnant. Obviously, I was over the moon. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God. And you're so right, because I was a lot happier as a person after seeing that gentleman, and I actually had a fertility appointment booked. So sometimes that can, sometimes when you're in that position, it can make you end up getting pregnant. I've heard of so many people like that. But I was so happy to get pregnant. But the first few weeks, week 5 to 8, I bled. So I was thinking the worst all the time. I literally have probably been for about, I know you shouldn't, but probably about 20 scans. So I was bleeding a lot. I was losing clots of blood. I went to my doctor. He actually did a pregnancy test with me. It came back negative. Later, we found out the pregnancy tests were actually not in date. So that was traumatizing because I was crying. I'd lost that baby in my head. And then I started to settle a bit into the pregnancy, never fully, never believed that I'd actually get this far, to be honest with you. And then I went for my 20-week scan and found that I've got a short cervix. Now, I had cervical, abnormal cells removed through a loop diathermy at the hospital. You should absolutely go to your smears, by the way, because I could not be sat here if it was a different situation. So, but you need to be aware that if they do this loop diathermy, then they do sometimes cut away part of your cervix, and it can leave you with a short cervix. So they measured my cervix because I was in the high risk category because I'd had miscarriage before and also George coming early, and they found that it was short. So basically what they wanted to do is put a stitch in. When I went down to surgery, had all the injections and everything, got down there wasn't enough cervix to stitch. And so they said, you need to go home and just see what happens, basically. So that was from week 20, and now I'm here still at week 29. So fingers crossed. I'll get a little bit further, really. I'm hoping to try and get, just another 4 weeks under my belt, hopefully, to where George was. Although that was traumatizing, at least, he had a really good chance of survival.
Oh, thank you so much, Carla, for sharing this very intimate story with us, because, it's so difficult because you're living through this at the moment. It's so much easier to talk about all this once you've got the baby. Carla, tell us, in terms of your anxieties at the moment, you've mentioned that you avoid meeting people. Tell us more about that. Why do you avoid meeting people when you're pregnant and you're doing so well? You're 29 weeks.
Yes, it's a really strange thing, actually, because before I went on with this short cervix, I was taking George on the school run and seeing people I know quite, and we live in a lovely little small town, and kind of everyone knows everyone, really. And so you'd see people that and obviously naturally, because they've seen on Facebook that you're pregnant, I wanted to announce it on Facebook because I found that helped me with the twins, because then people knew. And it was important for me that this baby had also as much as any other baby had, in terms of a bit of fuss, really. So people were asking me questions around the pregnancy, and I hated it. And it's not, do you know what? They're so lovely because they're just doing it, and it's so kind to actually think of other people to ask questions like that. But it's because I can't see my ending with a baby. Even now, like, we've just done the nursery because I'm 29 weeks, and I was actually crying earlier because I was just like, I feel like the pressure's on now a bit, because now, I just want to get her here safely. It's all becoming real. And when people ask me about the birth and stuff, at that point, I know that no matter where I am in my journey, this journey is nearly over for me, and I don't know how it's going to pan out, if I'm honest. I just don't believe that I'm going to have a baby at the end of it. And it makes me a bit emotional. I hope you don't mind, sorry. But I think that's a lot of it, really. And I think when you're going through a pregnancy after a loss, it's really difficult to kind of get to terms with it. Like, I love this baby so much, but there's still a barrier inside me that's saying, don't let yourself get too excited, or like, I've not got the pram, or I've not got certain things that I think, I really should get that, but I'm not allowing myself to yet, if you know what I mean. But it's just, I think a lot of people that I've spoken to who have suffered loss before, I mean, it's even as little as something like you can feel something in your knickers a little bit. You get a bit more discharge around that time when you're pregnant. And I'd be out shopping, and then I'd think, oh my God, that's the baby. I've lost the baby. So I'd come home, run to the toilet, and it wouldn't be blood. So then I'd be like, oh my gosh, still there. It's just all of these kind of worries that you go through when you've lost a baby before. You know, all of them, like, is she kicking enough? Like, even every night I'm there, lay there. I mean, I'm using it as an excuse to drink as much full fat Coke as I want and also eat as much chocolate as I want. But I'm lay there on my side, counting the kicks, like, is she okay? Is she okay? Well, every time I feel a kick, I feel relieved. And I think it's just a nerve-wracking time. And I'm almost envious of people that are pregnant and haven't been through things before, because I think, oh, I love watching their stories and watching them enjoy the pregnancy. And I just wish I could do the same. And don't get me wrong, I'm so happy to be in this position. I just wish I could stay in this position forever, because I'm so happy and I'm just scared of what the outcome will be.
Carla, our prayers, our wishes are with you and your baby. And I promise you that God will have mercy and you will be holding this baby very soon in one piece. And then we'll interview you again. Now, in the end, very quickly, what is your message for all these lovely mothers out there who are in a very similar position as yourself, struggling, high-risk pregnancies, worried about their safety of their babies, avoiding public, avoiding any sort of celebration?
I would say go on Instagram, and instead of following all these picture perfect people, find your people. And that's what I'd say. I'd say use the hashtags wisely. Instagram's a great place because you can hashtag and you can find people that suit, you know, what you're looking for at the moment. And also Facebook, it's great for groups. Like, I found so many people with short cervix, so many groups that I can actually post into, get advice from other women. A lot of them are lovely. A lot of them have success stories and lovely success stories at the end of it, and that just keeps your hope alive. And also find someone that's going through a similar thing that is speaking about it and sharing it, so you don't feel alone.
No, definitely, Carla. Thank you so much for coming on our show. Thank you so much. We promise to invite you once you have that baby in your arms, healthy and hearty. Viewers, it was a delight to have Carla on show. It's time for us to say Allah Hafiz. See you next week.